The Construction Association of Michigan, CAM, has been helping commercial and industrial contractors and suppliers grow since 1885. Now's the time to join. Visit buildwithcam.com. If you're a construction company looking to grow, CAM offers resources to help you build your staff, find more projects, and expand your network. Join today. The Construction Association of Michigan. They're one industry, one resource, one CAM. Join today at buildwithcam.com.
Today's episode of CAM's Building Michigan podcast is sponsored by Priority Health, endorsed health insurance carrier for CAM members.
So right now, we've all been feeling lots of shifts in our lives. We've gone from crazy busy schedules to way more time with our loved ones, from commuting to the office to working from our couches. And that's okay, because Priority Health is always ready to shift right there with you. So whether you're experiencing a shift in employment or you're prepping for a new member of the family to arrive, Priority Health has you covered. Priorities shift, so maybe it's time your health insurance company did too. Find your plan at PriorityHealth.com.
It's that time of year. Time to review your workers' compensation plan and shift to coverage that pays you back. CAMCOMP, part of the Construction Association of Michigan, is the state's leading self-insured group designed for the construction industry. The safer your employees, the more money you get back. The average payback to members is 45% of their premium, a very smart investment.
Find out how safety pays. For more information, please contact Michelle Mage at mmage@camcomp.net.
Hello, and welcome to our 17th episode of the Building Michigan podcast, produced for Michigan's construction industry by the Construction Association of Michigan, CAM. My name is Kevin Koehler. I'm the president of CAM and your host for Building Michigan. Our podcast is designed for the construction industry here in the Great Lakes State. Each 25 to 30-minute episode will feature conversations on industry topics, including a variety of conversations with industry leaders discussing construction projects, trends, business development, workforce safety, legislation, and other industry-related topics. So let's get started. This is Season 2, Episode 17. Today's episode features a conversation with Alex Calderone and Patrick Bero of Calderone Advisory Group. Let me start by presenting the guys' bios. Alex Calderone is a seasoned advisor in the construction sector, with a history of guiding contractors and skilled trades organizations across the United States through various economic cycles. His expertise in turnaround and transaction advisory services have been critical in both booming and challenging times. He carries with him the hard-earned lessons from the Great Recession, maintaining a realistic perspective that guards against the dangers of normalcy bias. As we approach the America 2.0 era, Alex promotes a balanced approach to business, one that leverages growth opportunities while strategically navigating potential risks. His advice is grounded in practical experience, making him a reliable resource in this period of transformation. Alex serves on the Michigan Association of Public Accountants Construction Industry Expert Panel and is a regular contributor to business issue-related discussions in local and national media outlets, offering insights drawn from a deep well of industry knowledge and practical experience. Also joining us today is Patrick Bero. Patrick brings to the table over 30 years of rich experience serving diverse sectors including real estate, hospitality, gaming, financial, and public sectors. His clientele spans state and municipal governments, multinational organizations, middle-market companies, and sole proprietors, showcasing his versatility and depth of understanding in these various industries. Before joining Calderone Advisory Group, Patrick held pivotal roles as the CEO and CFO of the Detroit Regional Convention Facility Authority for over 12 years. His stewardship saw him overseeing a vast array of administrative functions and spearheading a $279 million capital expansion and renovation program for Detroit's Huntington Place Convention Center, formerly known as Cobo Hall. As we enter the America 2.0 era, Patrick's background equips him with the knowledge to guide others in navigating complexities of public-funded projects, making him a reliable resource for industry players looking to seize new opportunities and handle potential challenges effectively. Alex, Patrick, welcome to today's Building Michigan podcast.
Thanks for having us, Kevin. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Kevin.
Well, guys, thanks for coming out today and taking some time out of your busy schedules. And I want to put this into a little bit of context for our listeners out there. You guys are both going to be presenting to the CAM Roundtable Series, or as part of the Roundtable Series, the Building America 2.0 program, which will be held on November 9th from 8 to 10 a.m. at the Somerset Inn in Troy. And the cool thing about this program for our listeners is that it's designed to equip Michigan's construction industry leaders with the insights and strategies they need to navigate the plethora of opportunities that will be coming our way in the not-too-distant future. And we're going to touch on those in just a second, guys. But some of the cool topics that will come out of this program, and we'll talk briefly about today, are an overview of governmental stimulus programs and how they will impact Michigan's construction industry specifically. We're going to identify and strategize against potential risks or obstacles that can come out of taking on some of this massive amount of work. We'll also discuss the argument for converting a lot of the vacant office space in Detroit to potential hotels, because we have a major hotel shortage, which Patrick has told me about and has firsthand knowledge of. He'll talk a little bit about. And then ultimately the favorable conditions supporting Metro Detroit's industrial sector. So we've got a really great program. I think we all agree that it's going to be very informative and super beneficial to CAM members. So on behalf of myself and the guys here today, we encourage all of you to come out and see us in person on November 9th. With that, let's get started with today's program. So, guys, as I mentioned, welcome. You've got some lengthy bios there. Congratulations on those, and we're happy to have you here. All right, Alex, let's start with you. As I think our listening audience knows, or I just mentioned, you're going to be the keynote speaker at our upcoming CAM Roundtable meeting in November. We're excited to have you, and you're going to be presenting the Building America 2.0 program, which is seizing this once-in-a-generation opportunity to grow and to thrive. So, Building America 2.0 means what? Why don't we tell our listeners, our contractors, our suppliers out there what that means, and then what does it mean for them? And, I look at it as, when I look at your presentation, all the spend that's coming, how do they take advantage of that, and what are we looking at?
Well, the Building of America 2.0 is really designed to denote a significant surge in government spending that Michigan is going to probably be able to capture more than its fair share of. There are three governmental bills: the U.S. Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act. The official estimates would tell you that there's probably $1.5 trillion at least of governmental stimulus that is going to flow primarily into the construction industry as a result of these bills. I think the dollars will even exceed that. When the government develops their estimates, they're not really taking into consideration the fact that they can't quantify most of the tax credits that comprise this spending, and the early analysis is suggesting that they way underestimated how much that was. So the cumulative impact of this is probably $2-3+ trillion, and Michigan is going to get a very, very significant chunk of that. And it's been a long time sitting here in Metro Detroit since I think people really had ever seen anything like this on the horizon. We went through a great recession where projects were stalled, canceled, stopped. The Michigan economy, has had a fairly hard time, recovering since its glory days of the auto industry and when it was really dominated by Detroit. And we think this is the construction industry's kind of once-in-a-generation opportunity to thrive and to capitalize on market conditions that just, in my lifetime, have never been this favorable.
It's kind of like I hate to use the analogy perfect storm, but it's a good storm, right, on the horizon. I mean, we've got all this infrastructure spending, which we see every morning when we drive 96 and 696 and every other road in Michigan. But it's not just the roads, it's the airport, it's the water system, it's all of these other things that go into that. And I know there's like $10 billion, in that here in Michigan. And then with the EV plants and some of the other money coming our way. It presents such an opportunity for contractors. And after looking at some of the decks you guys put together, I'm super stoked and excited to show this to contractors, what the opportunities are. I mean, Patrick, do you have anything to add to that at all? Or?
Well, sure. I mean, it really is a sea change, because you're talking about, in a single year, the Michigan construction industry generated about $21 billion toward GDP. That's about 3.4% of the state's overall GDP, about 2% of construction nationally, which is about $1 trillion. But when you look over the next decade at what's anticipated to come into Michigan, not only the government stimulus spend, but the private money that goes with it, because typically the government dollars require some form of match. It's anywhere from 25 to 75%. So if you did 10 years at $21 billion a year, that's $210 billion. Well, we're looking at numbers that suggest the overall construction spend over the decade could be as high as $400 billion. So that's near doubling of what the normal organic activity would be. So that is a significant push for the domestic construction industry, and I think the answer to them and the importance of this conversation now is, what are you doing to prepare to capture that? Because I think if we step back and look at it, the government's going to spend the money. The question is, who's going to capture it? Right. Is it going to be the domestic construction industry, domestic Michigan construction industry, or is it going to be construction firms from outside the state, because we don't have the capacity to absorb it all? And what are you going to do now to make sure that your firm does have the capacity to take on these jobs?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect summary, because in looking at these slides, there's just so much opportunity. Even if a few things get derailed, there's still just an enormous amount of opportunity. But how do you, as a contractor out there, take the best advantage of that and navigate that whole process and not overload yourself? So, Alex, let me flip back to you. If you could just give me, the top areas of spend here in Michigan. I know that, we've got solar going on. There's the wind towers and things like that. I know you guys have tracked some of that. You've tracked some of the EV battery plants. And some of the EV manufacturing plants. I mean, you're going to touch on all of that in the presentation, but talk about what you see as the biggest opportunities in those areas.
Well, I think if we break those down by sector, by far the largest opportunities are going to be those coming out of the auto business. The autos are trying to transition to electrification on a very short timeline. And that is just driving project announcements like we've never ever seen before. These are very, very big, substantial projects. The largest one, which is presently on hold, is $2.5 or could be $3 billion. The Ford Marshall project. That's the one that everyone's been keenly focused on. But we rarely see announcements for these that aren't in at least the hundreds of millions of dollars. And so I think that is, by sector, the vast majority are going to come, the big ones at least, are going to come out of the auto industry. But we're also seeing very substantial projects in the healthcare space, $3 billion. There was an announcement recently, $3 billion in the New Center area. Henry Ford and a health system and a few partners have announced that project. That's going to be big. We're seeing upgrades to things like dormitories at universities. The University of Michigan is undertaking a substantial project in that regard. And then obviously, one thing that hasn't gotten a lot of public attention that we think will get a lot of attention, perhaps the linchpin to all of this, is the power grid. We do not have transmission or storage capacity to create the world that we want to create, an electrified world, particularly with vehicles that require charging. In order to charge, we need to be able to take capacity to the vehicles and store it, and we don't have a lot of that. So I think we'll see a ton of investment there. And then obviously we have our roads, we have our bridges, we have airports. I think the money is going to flow into all of these different sectors. Auto will lead it, but people who are not exposed to auto, there's still a lot of opportunity outside of auto. Data centers, and for anyone who's been following those, artificial intelligence programs like OpenAI's ChatGPT really require these kind of cloud-based solutions where the data is processed in these centers. Those projects are massive. Some of those projects are $1 billion plus. If Google wants to build a data center, it's $800-900 million plus. The state right now is not super competitive as it relates to the data centers, but they're trying to move toward that. There are several bills that are circulating within the legislature to that underlie an effort to make regulatory and tax conditions particularly more favorable for folks to be developing those in this state. So I think Michigan's going to get a fair share of a lot of these projects, and not just automotive. It's a lot of other stuff out there.
Yeah, and the data center thing is huge. It's huge nationally right now, and those are enormous construction projects and highly technical with all the electrical wiring and everything that goes into them. But the key there is we've got to be able to get the energy to them. And you're right. There's a couple of bills circulating in Lansing. We just had our legislative breakfast, had 4 legislators in last Friday, and we talked about that specifically. And all 4 of them, 2 senators, 2 state reps, 1 Democrat, 1 Republican from each of those two groups, and they all were supporting, the tax incentives to try to get and capture some of this data center activity. The other thing is we've got to get after our energy producers to improve the grid, and that falls back on, DTE and consumers. I know that they're starting to reopen the nuclear power plant, or they got the federal okays to open it on the West Coast. I'd like to see us built, and that's me personally, some more nuclear, because I think it's the most reliable, largest producer of energy that there is. Certainly more reliable than solar, but I hate to say that in front of all the green people out there.
If you think, Kevin, of where Michigan stands in all of this, we are a state that peaked decades upon decades ago, and in the ensuing decades, from probably the 1940s or the 50s or the 60s, we had an exodus of population. Unfortunately, people left this state, and we didn't see a lot of new development. A lot of the infrastructure that we did have, a lot of the industries that we did have, the car business most notably, they stayed here, and so we still have a fairly dense population. We still have a need for schools, for hospitals, for just general infrastructure, and we're due for a refresh. And so I think part of the opportunity is being driven by government stimulus, but the other part of the opportunity is the fact that we have an older infrastructure. We are not the Metro Detroit, in particular, the surrounding areas. They were built up 100 plus years ago. And it's not like we're sitting here in Austin, Texas, where we've just recently had this, kind of massive population inflow, and all of our infrastructure and our hospitals, our schools, our colleges, our universities, everything's brand new. Stuff hasn't been built in Michigan for a long time, and the stuff that was built is old and it's aging, and that's also a factor that when we consider, kind of the title and of the topic here and the theme of Building America 2.0, there is some element of just rebuilding things that are old, which in the state of Michigan, we have a lot of things that are old that need to be rebuilt, and that will also drive opportunity.
Yeah, it reminds me, the Davison Freeway was the first freeway in the United States. Think about that, built here in Michigan, and now it's a dilapidated, in need of a lot of work. But you're right. At one time, we were at the forefront of that kind of stuff, and now we're kind of, the tail wagging the dog. So this is a great opportunity for us as a state to get back in the game and get back in, with some representation. Patrick, let me ask you, and you guys can jump around this answer, but one of the headwinds that I see and we talk about all the time, and really we've been talking about this for years and years and years, is the lack of a qualified or skilled workforce to take on all this work. Now, obviously, we have some great unions and great union workers here in this town, and a lot of training goes on there. But, in all the reading I do, we've got 2/3 of those people retiring. They're 50 years or older. They're retiring in the next 10 years from the skilled trades, and we've got young people entering, and we're starting to do a better job as an industry to promote to the skilled trades again as a viable career, and I think it's starting to take hold. But are we going to be able to make that gap up, and how do we keep pushing to get more and more younger people involved in our industry here in construction.
Well, Kev, I'm speaking to you from firsthand experience. Our issue in Michigan isn't a lack of a skilled trade workforce in as much as the people that we've got, they know how to build things incredibly well. I was very fortunate during my career and time at the convention center to work with a gentleman by the name of Gary Brown. He ran his own owner's rep architecture and engineering business. He oversaw many of the biggest projects in Southeast Michigan. He oversaw Comerica Park. He oversaw Ford Field. He oversaw Little Caesars Arena. He did the Fermi nuclear plant. You name it. If it's a big project in Southeast Michigan, he was part of it. And he started his career at Walbridge, and he did a lot of work for Ford. And he would tell me stories about when he would go to other places around the country, he would bring Michigan workers with him to do those jobs because they knew how to build things. And if you look at the big projects that we've done recently where we've gone from worst to first, the Metro Airport, I remember when I first moved here, it was among the worst in the country. And then Delta came in and they redid that terminal, and all of a sudden it's one of the top airports in the country. Same thing, Tiger Stadium. Listen, I'm a baseball guy, and I have great love and affection and nostalgia for Tiger Stadium, but it was falling down.
Oh, yeah.
And then we built Comerica Park, and it's one of the best in the country, and Ford Field, one of the best in the country. Well, the challenge for us, though, is that we just don't have enough of them. And the underlying component of that is Michigan isn't growing fast enough relative to the rest of the nation. Part of our research, this has been an eye-opening exercise for me. If you go from 1990 to today, the United States population has grown by 33%. Michigan has grown by less than 8%. Now, there are certain things from a competitive standpoint. If you step back and you look at Michigan as a business, from a competitive standpoint, there are certain things that we're not going to be able to overcome. There is a segment of the population that does not want to settle down in a northern winter climate. I don't care how much money we throw at that problem, we can't change that. But there are things that we can address that would make Michigan attractive from a standpoint of getting more skilled trade workers in the state or encouraging people to go into the skilled trades. Early in my career, I lived in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas was booming. There were so many people, 6,000 people a month moving into the Las Vegas Valley.
We had contractors going there to do work.
We did. And big problem in Las Vegas wasn't only workers for the casinos and the resorts, it was school teachers. There were so many kids coming in, and they could not build schools fast enough. So they adopted strategies where they were going double sessions for schools in one building. Group would come in from 6 in the morning till 2. They'd go away for an hour. Whole new faculty comes in, and now another group goes from 3 to whatever. Or they went to year-round. They did all kinds of things. But part of what Las Vegas did to attract teachers, they went with a national campaign. Advertisements all over, and they increased wages, they increased benefits, they got creative to create incentives for teachers to want to come to Las Vegas. Maybe that's something that the construction industry or the state as a whole needs to do to try to attract the skilled trade people in numbers sufficient that we're going to need to capture this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that's before us. And it's not just pay and benefits. It's not just, well, let's make Michigan the top pay and benefits state in the country for skilled trade workers. Yeah, that would attract some, but there's other things. We can get creative. Maybe it's a thing, maybe the state says for 10 years you do a personal tax abatement, where for 10 years they don't pay personal income tax. I don't know what it looks like, and that's just spitballing, but we've got to get creative and figure out ways to draw workers to this state in numbers disproportionate to the organic population growth, which is too slow relative to the rest of the country.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that falls on some of our legislators. I mean, they've got to come up with some creative ways. I know that there's groups like Business Leaders from Michigan that are studying that and have some actual strategies in place. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we'll solve that, but certainly I completely understand what you're saying, and those are the kinds of things, the kinds of actions that we need to take to drive people back to our state to help us with this next level of expansion. All right, next question for you guys. We talk about the construction industry and ultimately, dealing with the underlying market conditions in each sector. What sectors do you think have the most opportunity for future growth for the CAM members that would be listening today, for the CAM members out there? What sectors do you see moving? I know we talked briefly, Pat, about the lack of hotel space in downtown Detroit.
Sure.
And there's a lot of office space that's going unused post-COVID, and you had some really interesting observations and thoughts on that, and you're seeing it, I guess, in other places around the country. Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit.
When I was head of the Convention Authority, we did an internal analysis back in 2016. We looked at our 14 competitors that we consider competitors in the convention business. And in the convention business, competitors are literally around the country, right? Because I don't have 3 convention centers in downtown Detroit that I'm competing with. It's cities around the country. And we took a look at it, and one of the biggest complaints from our clientele, which is the convention and meeting planning industry, has long been we don't have sufficient hotels in the downtown core. Huntington Place Convention Center is the 16th largest convention center in North America.
I didn't know that.
We have more than enough capacity to host over 90% of the conventions, meetings, and trade shows that exist nationally. We can hold them at the center because of the space that we have available and the amenities and the like. But when you look at our hotel supply in close proximity to the center, and the industry defines it as within 2 miles of the convention center. We're 16th largest convention center in the country, but we are dead last in among the 15 markets, including ourselves, when you look at the number of hotel rooms per square foot of availability. Just to get to average, in other words, to go from the very bottom of the list to the middle of the list, in 2016 we needed 3,000 hotel rooms just to get to average. So many years later, it's 2023, and I replicated that analysis to see how much progress we had made. I know that we've added about 1,200 rooms in the downtown core. Have we improved ourselves? The situation got worse. It's now 3,300 rooms for us to get from the dead last to the average because our competitors didn't rest on their laurels. They kept building as well. So we have this situation where we have a significant lack of hotel rooms, which is impacting our ability to draw in new conventions, meetings, and trade shows. As many boutique hotels have been built, and given that I'm 3,300 rooms short, I will take every single room they can give me. But to convention, meeting, and trade show planners, boutique hotels don't mean much because they need bigger boxes. They need 400 or 500 rooms. Plus, we've got a situation where there's about 6,000 rooms in the downtown core within 2 miles of the convention center, but 1,200 of those rooms are casino rooms. So that means that a segment of our customer base won't stay there. Religious conventions aren't going to stay at the casinos. Other conventions won't stay at the casino hotels. So I got 1,200 new rooms, but there's 1,200 in the supply that are off limits to a segment of my customer base. So how do we address this problem? Well, in the long term, we need investors to come into the market and build big box hotels. And for the upper upscale, that's the actual name of it, upper upscale class of hotel, think Hyatt, Hilton, Omni, Sheratons, Westins, those type of properties. It's about $600,000 per key to develop a 750-room hotel. So you're talking about $450 million in investment. An alternative to that is if you take a look at the office market in downtown, the pandemic hit it hard. Mr. Gilbert came in and bought up a lot of vacant buildings, and he renovated them, and he was working diligently with many others to repopulate downtown with new business. And then the pandemic hit. And now you've got a lot of office space that is sitting vacant, and it's not producing for its ownership, and it may not produce for a very long time. So there's an opportunity there, not for necessarily the Class A space, but for the Class B space and below, to convert those properties into hotels, into light industrial, some places light industrial, whatever. But office conversion is a very big opportunity. And in Detroit, particularly for the hotels, it's a very big need. And the convention center is all about economic impact for the city, region, and state. And it's us bringing in dollars from the outside into the local economy. So the more hotels we have, the more our ability to attract these events that bring in new money from the outside to our state. So it's a great investment on behalf of the city, region, and state for those dollars to come in, whether it be private or whether it be government incentive or whatever. But there's an opportunity there, and I think it would benefit the owners of office as well as the hospitality community and the economic impact it generates.
Are you starting to see any discussions in that regard, or are you kind of like the Pied Piper and saying this is what could happen if we?
Well, I have my flute in my pocket, but no, there are conversations. We've been. I do know that there are hotel developments in the queue. Still, a lot of them are boutique, but there's a couple bigger boxes that are in discussion right now, and there has been some discussion about some conversion of office space. It's a lot of it's behind the scenes and not ready for public consumption yet. But again, the opportunity's there, and if anybody could give someone a nudge to make, if they haven't thought about it, if this conversation right here today makes somebody think about it and consider it, I think that they'll find that there's a lot of value to be unlocked there.
Yeah, it's I hope the mayor listens to this show once in a while, and certainly the governor, because the right kind of incentive would really incentivize that kind of building and could make some of that stuff pop.
That's right.
And Kevin, what I would say is our firm has actually been approached by several of the organizations that have contemplated adding to the hotel space in the city. I think the challenge that folks have to surmount right now is, with interest rates having risen as rapidly as they did, these projects, their viability is always a function to a large degree of the cost of capital. And so I do anticipate, and this is just from having been in some of those trenches with the folks that are contemplating these projects, I do anticipate if we do see the cost of capital go down and fairly substantially to something close to where it was, or even higher than where it was, but less than where it's at right now, I think you will start seeing folks consider some of these larger scale projects that Patrick is talking about.
Yeah, I mean, so like the panacea of all this opportunity is out there, right? But the reality of the situation is exactly what you said, Alex. And we talked about this offline, but there's still some headwinds out there, and the headwinds involve our energy grid. The headwinds involve what's happening in the automotive industry right now with the strike, and they're starting to delay a lot of things, and there's a lot of gamesmanship going on there. And of course, financing, because when you're a commercial loan, I don't know what it's going for today. I know a residential loan goes for almost 8% today. It's the highest it's been since I bought my first house back in the 80s. It's definitely put some headwinds in front of us for a lot of that development.
Yeah, and that's, I think, to a large degree, in addition to helping people identify these opportunities that are out there certainly are a lot of them. We would be remiss if we weren't at least highlighting some of the risks that folks need to be aware of as they plan for these scenarios. The underlying projects, again, are always dependent on economic assumptions. And those economic assumptions can change on a dime, and they do change. And that's, I have a lot of vivid memories from past cycles where people were entrenched in projects, and all of a sudden the corporate finance folks said, hey, this doesn't make sense anymore. We got to skinny this down or cut it or postpone it. And that's why I think a lot of our advice will be tailored toward helping people take advantage of these projects, but not at the cost of jeopardizing their own viability if and when economic assumptions change.
Hey, Kev, let's think about the recent history. There was a series of bills that was passed not too long ago in the legislature that was affectionately called the Gilbert bills. And the fundamental underlying argument behind that legislation that was being made was the development costs in Detroit are not significantly different from the development cost in New York and Chicago. But the difference is the revenues that are generated in Detroit for those developments are significantly less. So if you want the type of construction and the type of skyline and the building capacity in Detroit that you want to see in these other major cities, something has to give. And if the market revenues aren't there to support developments of this size, something else has to come to the table to support it, or else it's not going to be viable. And that's the same thing, we're seeing. There's a reason that the market is responding to the need for hotels with boutique hotels, because the developers perceive the risk to be too great to go with a bigger box. They see an opportunity, they think that they're going to make good money on it, but to go much bigger, they don't feel that the risk is worth the corresponding reward. We're seeing hotel rates and occupancies start to get to the traditional levels where development is encouraged. When we renovated the convention center, new hotel development started at a time when occupancies and rates weren't where the industry would usually suggest it's appropriate for hotel development. The reason it happened is because we put almost $300 million into the convention center, and they wanted to capitalize on it. So we were the tip of the spear that spurred development at a time when the market would normally say that's not correct. Mm-hmm. Well, now we're starting to get occupancies rates back up to those levels where it is correct, and we just need people to be willing to step in and take the risk.
And Pat, as you went through, kind of that, some of the comments that you just had, a light bulb kind of went off in my head, and I think that the issue here that many are going to deal with. I mentioned earlier that the auto construction is by far going to lead this economic renaissance, this manufacturing renaissance. Particularly in this region and in our state. And that is a transformation that is largely being forced by the government. And, they're ponying up and they're writing big checks and they're being very supportive in not just financially, but from a regulatory perspective. I think they will be very supportive of this transition. But at the end of the day, the underlying economics need to work in the long run. And for the auto business in particular, people have to want to drive and purchase electric vehicles. And that demand isn't there right now. The auto companies they're dealing with a UAW strike, and we're already seeing the announcements that certain projects are being postponed as a result of that. And frankly, that some of these projects may face an uncertain future depending on that issue. And when you combine with that the fact that the auto companies have maxed out their pricing power. The market cannot absorb another dime, another nickel, another penny added to the purchase price of a vehicle. Cars are very expensive now. They've gone up 10, 20, 30+%, depending on which time horizon you're measuring from. But I think from 2019 to today, car prices have gone up 30 to 40%. And so, on the auto piece in particular, this session is really designed to help people understand some of those risks. It does not mean don't chase the projects. It does not mean that there's not tremendous opportunity on the horizon, but it means do it in a way so that if some of these risks materialize, you will still be okay. And we get into a lot more of those details in the actual presentation, but we would be remiss to not identify these risks, because part of being successful entails having a plan B. And hopefully no one will ever need these plan Bs, but it's a really big part of our conversation, and what we're trying to get out there is just be prepared under any set of circumstances.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So, guys, we're going to wrap this up here. And Alex, I'm going to ask you first, if you could summarize what you feel that the CAM membership, and you know who that is predominantly, what are they going to get out of the Building America program, or what do you hope they get out of it? And then, Pat, I'm going to ask you kind of a similar question. Sure. Okay.
Well, I guess my main hope is that they just understand what's out there, and that we do have this tsunami of opportunities, the likes of which we've just never seen in this state, in my lifetime at least. And so we want people to be very excited. We want people coming into the meeting being very excited. But as someone who, I guess, is classically trained as a turnaround person, who's seen what happens when all that glitters doesn't end up being gold. We hope to prepare people to take advantage of the opportunities while figuring out how to mitigate their downside risks. And we're not going to get into those things in this podcast, but we will during the presentation. And none of the advice that we have to offer is rocket science, but it's pragmatic, it's practical, and it comes from lessons that we've learned in the trenches. And we hope to look. We want to see this industry successful. We want to see our contractors in Michigan successful. We want people to make a lot of money. We want the economic spillover effect to be just a tremendous thing for generations to come, and we just want to help people get there.
Awesome, yeah. And I've seen your decks. This stuff it's loaded with great information. So I encourage all of our listeners to make sure that they come out to this event on November 9th, 8 to 10 at the Somerset Inn. Patrick, let's wrap it up with you. What are you seeing people getting out of this thing?
It would be my hope that after coming and engaging with us during this presentation, that they leave thinking about what am I going to do to invest in my success going forward, and how am I going to position my organization to take advantage of these opportunities. It is not going to just fall into your lap. It is going to take work. It is going to take the assumption of some risk. Don't sit there and say there aren't enough employees and I can't find enough workers, but you're not willing to partner with the new Carpenters Training Center and put somebody on your staff when they come out of that training center, even though you traditionally might think, I don't have enough work to bring this person on. We can train as many people out of the union halls in their training programs as we want, but if there's no place for them to land, then that training is all for naught. So the company we are going to present, there's a lot of opportunity coming in the pipeline. And a lot of times that opportunity just pops up out of nowhere and you hear about it in a news release. But this is something that's foreseeable. It's been projected. The market is being given a long runway to prepare for this coming. And I would encourage all the members to, when you walk out of this, think about what you're going to do to prepare to capture this opportunity, because I said it before, this is going to happen. It's just a question of how many Michigan companies are positioned to take on that new business, or is it going to be from companies from outside the state? Because I'm telling you right now, if we're not willing to capture it, they're going to be happy to come across our border and capture as much of this business as possible.
Get ready. All right, guys. Hey, just a reminder for our listeners to please come out and attend the Building America 2.0, seizing this once-in-a-generation opportunity to grow and to thrive. Again, it's on November 9th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. at the Somerset Inn in Troy. The registration fee is $50, and you can go to events at buildwithcam.com and register, or you can call Patty Shear at 248-972-1133. Registration is filling up fast, and we are limited in seating, so please give us a call and get your reservation in. We'd love to see you there on the 9th. Alex, Patrick, on behalf of all of us at CAM, myself, and our producer, Tim Andrews, thank you for being with us today on Building Michigan's podcast.
Thank you, Kevin.
Appreciate
the opportunity.
Great job, guys.
Thank you for listening to Building Michigan, the official podcast of the Construction Association of Michigan, hosted by Kevin Koehler, CAM President. We appreciate you spending a part of your day with us. If you have a second, please share our podcast with industry colleagues, leave us a review, and connect with us at www.buildwithcam.com. That's all for now. Be sure to subscribe to Building Michigan wherever you get your podcasts, and join us for the next episode.
Today's episode of CAM's Building Michigan podcast is sponsored by Priority Health, endorsed health insurance carrier for CAM members.
So right now, we've all been feeling lots of shifts in our lives. We've gone from crazy busy schedules to way more time with our loved ones, from commuting to the office to working from our couches. And that's okay, because Priority Health is always ready to shift right there with you. So whether you're experiencing a shift in employment or you're prepping for a new member of the family to arrive, Priority Health has you covered. Priorities shift, so maybe it's time your health insurance company did too. Find your plan at PriorityHealth.com.
It's that time of year. Time to review your workers' compensation plan and shift to coverage that pays you back. CAMCOM, part of the Construction Association of Michigan, is the state's leading self-insured group designed for the construction industry. The safer your employees, the more money you get back. The average payback to members is 45% of their premium, a very smart investment.
Find out how safety pays. For more information, please contact Michelle Mage at mmage@camcomp.net.
The Construction Association of Michigan, CAM, has been helping commercial and industrial contractors and suppliers grow since 1885. They provide contractors leadership through aggressive lobbying, construction project reporting, safety and education training, industry promotion, insurance, and banking. Are you an owner, developer, or buyer of construction services? Hire a CAM member to get your project done on time and under budget. They are one industry, one resource, one CAM. Check them out at buildwithcam.com.